All right. Hello, hello. I hope this is live now. Once it is, I hope someone can write in chat. I'll be tweeting the stream out now, and then we will get started. All right. Buck is ready in chat. Hello, Wolfie. Walks. Oh god, I can't read that name in. It's too hard. All right. In order for the people that will watch this later, when it's the VOD, I want to get started right away. So I've already said, just a quick recap, in the last video on BakkesMod, that all you need for this is Visual Studio 2017. So I hope everyone that wants to work with this has it installed now. It's also useful to have Python. I kind of forgot about that. You don't have to use it, but I'm going to show that in a second why it will be useful, because there's a script that automatically updates your plugin when you whenever you made a change. All right, let me quickly check the chat. Will there be a video of this? Yes, this will stay up as a video. And yeah, I hope everyone is ready who wants to work along. The first thing we need to do is create a new project for our plugins, and we need a DLL. So I'm gonna browse a folder that I want. I have my neat little Bakkes folder, and I'm just gonna call my plugin tutorial plugin. Creating an RL bot live when never. All right. Name will also be tutorial plugin, and I'm also creating a new Git repository. All right. So yeah, we're creating a dynamically linked library that we will use for to hook BakkesMod. Well, that BakkesMod will use, and then it will run the functions that we provide. There are a couple of changes we need to make here in the properties of the project, and I'm gonna drag this to the right screen. The first one is we need to make sure that this is Win32 and that it's not debug, because debug doesn't work for this, I believe. So that's that. And then we need some additional include directories. And what we need to include is from the BakkesMod folder. So in your Rocket League directory, or you can just open it with the, actually just open it with the injector, that's the easiest. Injector, and then if it loads. Okay, open BakkesMod folder. And in here we have the BakkesMod SDK folder. So we need this include folder and we need this library folder. So I'll first just go with the include folder and put this right here in the additional include directories. And hit apply. And then we also need the lib for the linker, which also I believe has additional library directories right here. So we can put this folder right here. And as far as I know, that should be the setup that is needed. But yeah, I'm gonna leave it right here for now. I'm gonna show with the script later once we have something standing. I already said in the video that I don't know how to create a plugin. I mean, I've never created a plugin from scratch actually, so I don't know the exact process, but I think that's also kind of good, because when you create your own plugin, there isn't really a good documentation for this kind of stuff, so you're gonna have to figure it out on your own usually, and I'm gonna show how you would do that. So if you search on GitHub and we just search for BakkesMod 2 plugins, this repository contains all the plugins that BakkesMod has by default, and all the plugins are open source, which means you can look at these and see how they work and copy the ideas over. And that's gonna be basically the main idea that will help us to create our own plugin. So let's not go with the workshop plugin. Let's go with something that actually manipulates the ball. Dribble plugin. And you can see that all that the dribble plugin needs is a project file, of course, and then one header and one CPP file. Of course, you can create more files if your plugin gets bigger, but that's all we need in the first place. So the part that I didn't know was this line. I'm gonna enlarge it a bit, make sure you can see it on stream. Line 6. This is basically like a define. I don't know what it's exactly. Maybe Bakkes can write it in chat if it's important. But basically you tell it the name and the long name with spaces or description maybe, and then the version number, and then this is for permissions, I believe. If you do plugin type free play, it's only gonna work in free play, and I believe workshop maps are also free play. Otherwise, their plugins can also work in, I believe, in offline matches in general, and in replays. You can also make plugins for replays. And there are different plugin types for that, and we can look at them by looking at some plugins that actually do something else. For example, I do believe the plugin for the dolly cam isn't actually in here in this repository. Okay, so I don't know a plugin which has different things right now, but yeah, we can look at that later. First, I'm just gonna copy that over, and I am seeing that I actually created way more than I need, right? Yeah, I don't need any of this by default, because we're gonna create like a small project. We don't actually need all these default include files and stuff. We're just gonna create our own ones. And yeah, regular header file. Call this one same name. Tutorial plugin.h. Alright. And this one is obviously then gonna include tutorial plugin.h. Okay. Next step. Well, okay. Next step is well, we need a function that's gonna get loaded once the plugin gets loaded. So when you open up Rocket League, which I'm gonna do now, don't forget to delete the include. The which one? I deleted the stdafx.h already, if you meant that one. Okay, when you open Rocket League and you have a plugin that you want to load, then there is a command for that in BakkesMod, which is just plugin load, and then you put there the name of the plugin. In our case, that would be tutorial plugin, but it's obviously not even, we didn't compile it or anything, so there's no way to actually load it right now. But that's the general idea. And when the plugin gets loaded, so when this is called, then what BakkesMod is going to do, it's going to call your plugin the onload function. So basically when the plugin gets loaded in the game, this onload function will get called. And from there on, if you don't set anything in this onload function, then BakkesMod is not gonna load anything. Well, it's not gonna do anything. Basically, you have to define all the things that you want to do in the onload function. And if you say you want to create a command, then you create that command in the onload function. And then, for example, this is a command right here, shoot at me. And then that command is created. And when that command is called, then you can tie that to a different function and tell the mod basically to call a certain function. But by default, the only function that gets called by BakkesMod is the onload function. And if you unload the plugin, then the onunload function gets called. So if you're if you're using any memory of the that's not on the stack, then you should probably unload that there. Otherwise, you're memory leaking. You missed the first part. Yeah, well, I do believe there's live DVR, so you can actually watch it back right now. But it's a bit of a problem. I can't just like go over it every time someone else joins. So I'm sorry about that. Okay, first of all, I need to turn down the FPS because I don't need them higher than 60. And my graphics card is spinning up. Alright. So I've explained the onload function. But obviously when we can create that, but first I need to copy this one over. We're gonna call it also tutorial plugin. I do believe that this string needs to be the same as the C++ file, or at least the linked library at the end that is coming out of the mod. And this one can be anything though, and same with the version number. Let's just go with 1.0. You don't know Python, you only know Java. I mean, this is C++. And if you don't have any knowledge of C or C++, then you're not going to be able to follow along probably. So this is not a C++ tutorial, you're first going to have to learn that. Okay, so BakkesMod plugin by default isn't defined because first we need to import the right stuff that this macro gets defined. And I'm not sure which one this is, but I do think it's in the header file. Exactly, we need the hashtag include BakkesMod plugin. Okay, wait, I now included that in the CPP file. I want to do it the same way Bakkes does it. So yeah, I'm gonna include this in the header file, but I'm not sure why it's not finding the import. Oh, my build has still debug on top, right? I need to change this to release, right? And in the properties, I added the includes. I added them under release, so it didn't find them because I wasn't on release. So now I'm on release, so it finds the include, and this should work. And now it tells me something else. Tutorial plugin is undefined, and that might be because I haven't created basically this base class. You're gonna need one base class. So you can provide the function onload and unload. So once again, we are going with tutorial plugin right here. And now it's all fine because yeah, we're passing the class here. Tutorial plugin class. And the class does provide an onload and unload function. So I'm gonna create a definition. Basically, just create an empty function for both of these, because we obviously need to implement them in order to run our plugin. And yeah, I don't know what this line does. Maybe Bakkes can explain this. What pragma comment? It's not a preprocessor command that I'm familiar with. But it seems like something that we might need, because it says something about the linker file, the BakkesMod.lib. Okay, it links the BakkesMod library. Okay, I didn't know you needed that in the header file too. Okay. Okay, so basically it's just a double link, but I'm already linking that with the properties. But yeah, okay, we can just put that in there. It's not gonna hurt anyone anyway. Okay, so I think we already have a working plugin now. It just does nothing. So let's just try and build this and see if it goes through. Well, it failed. Okay, now it's asking me, did you forget to include, well, is this something, this might have been because of the way I set it up from the start. It's now expecting a certain header file, but I'm not actually sure why. Is this because I'm compiling from for the wrong target? Okay, so I need this header file, so I shouldn't have deleted it. I'm pretty sure I already compiled some of your plugins which didn't have that file, so oops. So, okay, so telling me I can leave this empty and now build it. Error list. Oh, right, I need to add the include. Okay, I wouldn't have needed it if I created an empty project. Okay. Well, there we go. So next time, create an empty project. And don't create a DLL project that you delete afterwards, where you delete everything afterwards. So I'm sure this has something to do with the project files. This needs to be in the CPP, I guess. It's still complaining. Oh, well, I most certainly did not forget it to add it to my source. All right. I did mistype it. Yeah, I did. Indeed. Oh, the file is. I mistyped the file name. Cannot rename. What? Oh. Okay. I need to existing item because this is still here. This is the correct one. And I'm gonna delete this completely. Or do I need the CPP too? Okay, I can disable it. Okay, that's the better way. Properties, C++, precompiled headers, use, do not use. I assume that's the one. we need okay, yeah, that worked. So yeah, next time create an empty project instead of when you create new project. Don't use I used Windows Desktop. Yeah, well, that's should be obvious why that doesn't work. It's probably under General, Empty Project, right? And then you can just create all the files manually, like we did in this step. All right, yeah, thank you very much, Crash. And yeah, okay, we have a plugin now, which is, where is it? Well, I created this folder in Documents, Bakkes Tutorial Plugin. So in the release folder, there's this dynamically linked library. And what you could do now is copy this into the Rocket League directory, the BakkesMod directory, which I actually have open here. And there is a folder plugins. This one. And you can just copy and paste that in there. And then you could open the console and type plugin load tutorial plugin. And you can see it loaded successfully. So that's good. Our plugin is working. It's just not doing anything at all. But every time we would change something with the plugin, we would have to plugin reload tutorial plugin. So in order to not have to do that, there's a Python script. And you can find that Python script again in the BakkesMod directory. Under BakkesMod SDK, there's the Bakkes patch plugin.py. And I would recommend that you just copy and paste that somewhere, because this file will be changed every time BakkesMod gets updated. So the one that is in this folder. So just copy this to somewhere where it's not gonna get changed. I have it in, well, where do I have all my folders now? Right here in my Documents Bakkes folder, I have this file right there. And what you need to do is open this with any text editor. This is a script file, and it's gonna do 4 things. Like it says here, it connects to BakkesMod via like Archon, and then unloads the previous plugin. Then it copies over your DLL file that you just updated, and copies it over to this directory, which means you need to replace this directory, which in the original file, I can open up this one too. This is the original one from Bakkes, which has a different path. So you need to replace that path with the Rocket League directory where you have Rocket League /BakkesMod installed. And if you have the default path, then it's just gonna be this, and I can copy paste that into chat real quick. So if you have default Rocket League installation, you can just copy that into this script. And that's basically all you need to change in that script. And make sure to end this with a /, because I've made that mistake many times to save it like this, and then the copying doesn't work properly. Okay, so yeah, this is all you need to do with that plugin. Just that one line needs to be changed to whatever your install directory is. And once you have that, you can actually tell Visual Studio that it should automatically run this script whenever the code has been updated. Well, not updated, whenever you have, whenever you recompiled the code. So that's under post build events. So yeah, in the configuration under properties on the project, post build event, and there you can do a command line call. And the command line call which again, I don't know by mind, but that's something I can copy over from a different plugin that I've already used. Let me do that real quick. All right. So the custom build, wait, no, build events, post build event. This is the one. I'm going to copy this from the other one and paste it in here. So this just calls Python. So as I said, you need Python installed for this script to work. And you need to make sure that it's actually in your path, so you can call it with the console like this. If that works, then in PowerShell or any other console, then you can call it like this, Python, and then you just put the directory of the plugin file wherever you put it. In my case, as I said, I put it in the Bakkes folder right here. And then the $ target path, also in apostrophes. And this target path is just gonna give the path to whatever your plugin, wherever your plugin posts the dynamic link library. So that's, in this case, the release folder. This is gonna be the target path with the tutorial plugin.dll. All right, let me check chat real quick. Okay, Magpie made a tool that apparently automatically finds the install directory. I'm gonna open this real quick. That is interesting. Okay, so there's just download links. I don't know where there's a 64-bit version. Is there any difference for a normal user? Anyway, I think I'm gonna put this in the description afterwards or in a comment. Let me just save this. And yeah. Or is this really easy to install? I mean, it's executable and a trust error. I'm just not just. Wait, it's not error. It's Magpie, but I tend to also trust him. So, can you give us a quick rundown on what you need to do? So you just need to call this once, and then it stays online and updates automatically, or? Oh, okay. So you just put this one, this is exactly the same, you just don't have to put the path. Okay, why is it an executable though? So I do have to call it right here. And I just call a BakkesMod patch. Like this. And then plugin name.dll. Do I need to put like target path slash plugin name.dll? Okay, let me test. Wait, that's not what I want to open. Let me test through the console. BakkesMod patch. Oh, it says help. Oh, I don't even have it. I need to... Wait, I'm really not sure how this works with the executable. Make sure that your executable is in the same folder. So the executable I downloaded just has to be put into the... Oh, right. Yeah, otherwise I need to add it to the path. Right. So I just take this. I wasn't sure how this was working. So yeah, okay. In case anyone is as stupid as me, you download this and then you put the executable in the release folder. Or no, not in the release folder, right? Just in the project folder in general. So this knows it. And then this will call the executable. I don't know if you need to put .exe at the end. And then I can just put plugin name because it's already gonna know the subdirectory. I should be able to test this. Change directory. Okay, tutorial plugin. And wait, I have tutorial plugin in there again. And now I can just call okay, so I need to call it with .exe. Okay, so I need to do this, of course. Okay. Then I need to provide the path, which means release / plugin name.dll. Okay, I'm really confused about this. I feel so stupid now. Target path contains the absolute path. Yeah. But oh. Yeah, plugin name. That explains everything. Yeah, I knew I shouldn't have tried doing this because I've never used it. I thought it should be easy, and it's easy, but yeah. Okay, so this seems to just work. So rather than having Python, you can just put the full path to the executable file right there and put this one in the same directory where I had the Python file, and then I just do this. And then it calls this part, and now we have to do the $target again, which I've already forgotten how it's working, but thankfully Bakkes has written it down in the chat. So this should work now. It doesn't. And I did a / again. Okay, the target plugin, the target already provides this, so you don't even need to add the DLL. All right, this works. Good, we got that out of the way. So yeah, I'm sorry about being so slow about that. I was really confused. I thought like an executable. Wait, is this like, yeah, I don't know. I've never seen an executable just for a script, to be quite honest. I've always seen like scripts in, I don't know, a bat script or something else, some other programming language. Nothing that gets compiled. Okay, so that part works. I can put this in the description at the end of the video for the people that are in chat. You already saw it from Magpie. I can post it again though. Okay, so with this script, to sum it up, all you need to do is properties, build events, post build event, put the location of the script right here, and then in quotation marks $target path in parentheses. So yeah, that's the version for idiots like me. Okay, so now our plugin is working, and as you can see, it reloaded in here more times than we actually type plugin reload. And that's of course because our script did the reloading. Obviously we want to do something, and I asked at the end of last video whether some people had some ideas, what easy stuff we could try out, and I have some myself, but if you have any idea, then you can come forward with that now, and we can maybe see if we can try and implement that. Alright, not seeing anyone's, I'm just gonna show my ideas. Make a plugin that gives me 200 rocket pass levels, please. Yeah, that kind of stuff is definitely impossible with the plugin API. But yeah, the ideas I wrote down are a custom map level teleporter. This one's a bit boring in my opinion. I've already shown that you can just like teleport the car around, and you can obviously do that with the plugins too. And the advantage of a plugin compared to just like a BakkesMod macro would be that you could actually check the current position and basically have some list, and based on that list you tell the game if the player is in that region, then he's currently in level 20 or something, and if he wants to press next level he will move to level 21 or something. That wouldn't be possible through just macros. But yeah, we're probably not going to do that. Then there's air recovery. If you don't know the recovery plugin from BakkesMod, then let me show it really quickly. Just gonna press start. Yeah, and this is just when you're on the ground, it's gonna bump you, and you're gonna try to recover. And we could basically replicate that in the air. So you have to do air recoveries, and you could make it so that it knocks you down and like flings you around, and you have to stabilize your car before it hits the ground, for example. And it would also be really easy to just copy over the majority of the recovery plugin code and basically just make it different so it works in the air, and change some of the parameters so they work better. Yeah, hitbox plugin also exists already. I showed that last video, so we don't need to create that. Slow motion training. This one's interesting. So obviously you can use BakkesMod to just create slow motion with his game speed slider, for example, the interface. And the idea that I had is basically a mod that allows me to turn up and down the speed that I currently have by a certain percentage. So rather than just setting straight values, I can increase the current speed by 10% or decrease it by 10%. And then you can easily use that mod to basically train the same scenario, first at, for example, 50%, and then you increase by 10%, increase by 10%, and you can basically just have bindings for that. And you can do the same with gravity. For example, if you use slightly higher gravity from 650 to 750, and you try to air dribble, well, now I also have 60 FPS in the stream running, so it's really extremely hard. But yeah, if you're trying to air dribble with like 100 more gravity, 750 instead of 650, it's a lot harder to keep the ball up. And as long as you're already good at air dribbling, that can be good practice. So the percentage base increase is very interesting in my opinion. And then the last one I've been asked a long time ago by a viewer is 360-degree gravity. So yeah, as I just showed, you can change gravity also and make it inverse, but you can't make it sideways, for example. And doing that would involve basically creating our own fake gravity. I don't know, anyone got any ideas what we want to do first? So I think the air recovery one would be pretty easy because, yeah, we can just take a look straight at the ground recovery plugin and basically copy a good portion of that over. Bakkes voting 2 or 4. Alright. Yeah, I would agree with that order too. I'm not sure what you mean, Crash C. What plugin? Are you talking about the Hitbox plugin? You could in theory make it work online, yes, but not with the BakkesMod plugin API. That's the point of the BakkesMod plugin API, that it's not possible to create stuff like that online. So basically you can't hack through BakkesMod unless Bakkes himself did it. And he doesn't, so that's basically the safety measure that's there. Alright. Yeah, we're going to do air recovery first. So what we want to do is take a look at the plugins and the recovery plugin, because we want to take those ideas and make them for the air. And well, where do I start here? Maybe at the top, because we can already see includes here of some game events and game objects. So we're gonna need the car because we want to modify the car and hit it around. Tutorial is just the game mod, which is basically free play and stuff like that. So cVars, how do I explain cVars? If you've never worked with BakkesMod, cVars are basically just variables, global variables, which you can also call through the console. And you can see we are registering a cVar here, a new one. Recovery bump speed angular, because I have loaded this mod in game. This one is gonna show up right here in the console. And we can change that variable through the console. The current value is 0.6, and we can just change that to 1, for example. So, oh, it's not 0.6. It's actually 0.6. So it's a random value between 0 and 6. That's what that means. And yeah, in order to register cVar, a global variable that the user can change afterwards when they use the mod, we have first the name of the cVar, then we have the default value, then we have a description, and the other parts I don't know by mind, but that's the part where Visual Studio should help us. So if I just pop this in here, then hover over it. Okay. Or at least if I do it manually. Right, okay. Visual Studio helping us right here. The cVar wrapper register cVar is the cVar name, then the default value, then the description, then whether it's searchable, which just means whether it's gonna show up in the console as far as I'm aware. We want that, of course. Whether it has a minimum. Do we need a minimum? Yeah, we need a minimum of 0. Because, yeah, negative doesn't work. Then we have to give the minimum. Then does it have a maximum? Also true because because that's what I want for now. Yeah, so we just copied over that cVar. Obviously, we don't want another cVar with the same name. And because our plugin will be the air recovery. What? My mic's dead? What? Oh god. How much did you miss? I wouldn't know. Oh yeah, I have a hotkey. 6 is my hotkey. That's really bad. So I'm assuming everything from where I just typed this, but there was nothing I said. Basically, I just said that I wanted to set it back to default. But it would have saved it because this value is set to 2. And then the only thing I said is that obviously we don't want a cVar with the same name. So we're gonna call this cVar air recovery bump speed angular instead of recovery. Did I miss anything else important? All right. No. Yeah. So this is gonna be our first cVar. The amount of bumping, yeah. This description is pretty good. How hard you will get thrown rotationally. So this is how much it will fling you around. Then we have the linear bump speed. We also gonna need this in the air. And we're also gonna set the horizontal and vertical one independently. And we're gonna make it the same air recovery. Minimum of 0 makes sense. A maximum, don't see why it shouldn't be 2300, since that is the maximum speed of the car. And the game doesn't break if you like set it to a higher speed. It just doesn't work. It's just gonna get capped off if you set a speed above 2300. So yeah, the linear velocity can be between, the vertical velocity, I mean, can be between negative 2,300 and positive 2,300. And these default values are not correct in our case, because when we're in the air and we want to do air recoveries and it's supposed to bump us around, then the default scenario should be that we're trying to stay upright, which for an experienced player should be easy, but for beginners it's interesting. And if we basically want the game to bump us down usually, so it hits us downwards and we need to stay up. But it could also hit us up, and if we hit the ceiling then it would also make it not that easy to recover. So the horizontal ones between 800 and 1100 is not that interesting, so I'm just gonna tune that down. Wait, my explanation of save to config was off. That is bad. Yeah, okay, let me do that in. The last parameter, which I'm just seeing that the other ones don't have this, but it's default to true, so it doesn't matter. But the last parameter is save to config file, which means if you're wait, I did explain that though, right? Didn't I? I mean, while the mic was still on. Okay, anyway. Yeah, the game doesn't save the values of the mods, for example, the plugins or anything. Game doesn't have a database. The mod doesn't have a database to save your settings. So all it does is save to a config file. And if you basically say that you don't want this cVar to be saved to a config file, then you can set it to false right here, which means that if a user changes the cVar with the console or the user interface, then they can close down Rocket League and BakkesMod. Well, they don't need to close down BakkesMod. When they close down Rocket League and start Rocket League again, then that value will be lost and it will be back to default. So if you want this to reset to the default every time, then you don't put this to true. By default it's true, so we can just leave this out. Alright, so I wanted to say, yeah, linear speed is not that important, quite frankly. But yeah, still can put it to 1000. Shouldn't hurt. Alright, this is just default value anyway, so we don't need to worry about this too much, but it's important that it will throw us downwards too. So we need negative values here. Then how much do we want to get thrown downwards? I think 1000 sounds fair. And usually we probably want to get thrown downwards more than upwards. But that's stuff we're gonna test once the mod does anything. Okay, then this one's also very important. We have the recovery cooldown, which is the time between individual bumps. Oops, why am I opening BakkesMod? And yeah, this is by default 3000 to 6000 milliseconds. So somewhere in between 3 to 6 seconds, it's gonna bump you again after the previous bump. And yeah, there's a maximum value of, I believe, 12 seconds. Or is that 120 seconds? That's 120 seconds, right? Yeah, 120 seconds, but it doesn't really matter. It's just so you can't like enter any stupid values, I guess. And that's basically all the cVars that we're gonna need. Now we need the actual logic that does anything. And in order to call that logic, because obviously we don't want to bump the player when the plugin gets loaded, we want to bump him on something else, we need to create something that will call the function when we want to get bumped. So that is what we do here. Instead of registering a cVar, we can register a notifier, which just means we can put a function right here. And we're just going to call the function when this command is entered into the console or called through any other way. So let me copy that over too. And go through that. Okay, so we have a game wrapper, which is provided by the BakkesMod plugin API by default. So that is coming through with the standard include BakkesMod plugin.h. And we can check if the player's in tutorial, which just means free play, as far as I know, or other tutorials like not custom training, but like aerial training. That will be considered tutorial too. It's the same as free play. Let me pause this. And yeah, we can already see right here one function we haven't talked about, logging. So you can already see that we are using the cVar manager a lot. And we can also use it to log something to the console. And if the player is not in tutorial and he calls the command recovery start, it's going to log to the console. You need to be in free play to use this plugin. And we can check that this actually works by using the recovery plugin and pressing the start button, which just calls the command, and then opening the console. Well, apparently not. I don't know if that suppresses the... Well, that explains nothing. That's a great example that I just wanted to show. I wanted to show that if you call recovery start through the console... Oh, it's... Oh, okay, I have a wrong version of BakkesMod installed currently, so I need to use the old console, apparently. Start. Well, that doesn't do anything either. Okay, but I have a wrong version of BakkesMod. That's basically the explanation. I don't use the usual branch because I have like some testing stuff for myself. And that's probably the reason it's not working right now, which is not the best, but yeah, but that should be the reason. That's how you can log, and it should work in general. So we want to once again call this air recovery start. So we have the commands not confused. And then what we're doing is last cooldown time, which is probably a variable that has been defined in the header file, but we haven't done that because we so far have only looked at the CPP file. So yeah, there are a bunch of variables here. This is public, and that's probably not intended either. Let's see. What do you have? Onload, unload. Okay. We want this to be private. Alright, we have recovery enabled, a boolean for that. Last bump time, last cooldown time, initialized to 0. And then what we do when the modifier is called, well, not the modifier, what am I talking about? The command is called. When the command is called, then it's gonna set the recovery cooldown. The last cooldown time. Okay, so how does this work? We use the cVar manager to get the cVar this time. We register the air recovery cooldown cVar right here. And then we want to get it. And we want to get a float value. And because this one is random, somewhere between 3000 and 6000, when you call this get cvar.getFloat value, it's gonna return a different number every time between 3000 and 6000. So that will give you the randomness in the last cooldown time. And then this is gonna check recovery and set recovery enabled to true, because we have, well, enabled the air recovery plugin now. And then we're calling check for bump, and that's where the rest of the logic will happen. But first, before we do that, we want to set the last notifier, because we actually need the ability to stop it. If we don't have the ability to stop it, then that would be pretty bad. So the permission to stop it is everywhere and not just in free play. Oh, I think I know the reason it doesn't lock, Bakkes. I think because it's permission free play, this cVar notifier will never get called if you're not in free play. Am I right? And if you have permission all right here for recovery stop, that works everywhere. That's just to make sure that it doesn't call the check for bump function logic. So this is actually all turned off. So yeah, all this does is turn recovery enabled to false. All right. Okay, Bakkes is not sure about that, but anyway. Let's move on. Let's go into the actual logic part. So we have three functions: check for bump, get bump timeout, and execute bump. And check for bump is the one that gets called right here, so let's go through that one first. So this one's not going to be in the load function anymore, but it gets called through the load function, so it's going to get called. Of course, our plugin is not called tutorial. It's called tutorial plugin. We have this. All right. What this does, let's just go through it quickly. If recovery is not enabled, then this function shouldn't be called. Makes sense. If the player is not in tutorial, which means not in free play or aerial training, the default aerial training, then it's going to return 2, do nothing. Otherwise, okay, we are doing a set timeout, which means we're gonna call a different function on a certain frequency. And the frequency, okay, so the function that we're calling is the first parameter. And we're gonna call check for bump. Wait, I'm confused by this. Okay, so this is a function which returns itself again. So okay, that is done for what reason? Which reason? This is done so we can have this on a period, right? And the period is get bump timeout. And the period of get bump timeout will make sure that it's up to date. Yeah, the last cooldown time. Let's just take a look at that. The logic is a bit weird, okay. Set timeout is executed once. It's just that this function calls itself, so it loops. Okay. Alright, so set timeout doesn't have a frequency. It just calls it once, the function that's inside. So it calls the check for bump once again the next time for at the, well, by with a delay of the time that we get out of this function, right? This function gives us the delay, and this function is gonna get called again. Okay, so this is the function which gives us the delay, which once again needs to be under tutorial plugin. And it's once again same thing, gonna check whether we're in free play or we even have this enabled. And otherwise it's just gonna return a float because it's a float function we don't care about. Then, okay, now this is the interesting part. This is where actual logic happens. So we have tutorial wrapper, and these are the BakkesMod wrappers. These are wrapping game objects that the actual engine has. And these are wrapped so you don't have basically direct access to some of the source code from Psyonix, or at least like reconstructed source code. So what do we have here? Tutorial wrapper is an extension of server wrapper, and that's basically the instance that you will have in any scenario except for the menu, I believe. The menu doesn't have a server, but I believe even if you're in replays, for example, so you will also have a server wrapper. But we in specific have a tutorial wrapper, which, as I talked about, the tutorial is stuff like free play or these tutorials, all four at the bottom. And in this we can do certain things, which we can see through IntelliSense. So I don't know, if you're not familiar with Visual Studio, you can get this kind of information just with a right click on whatever you're interested in, and then you can do peak definition, which will open this window inside the code, or you can do go to definition, which will open it, yeah, in an extra window or in the same window. Well, it's an extra window, okay. And otherwise, declaration, yeah, well, if you just want to go to the declaration, in this case we only have declarations, so you're always going to the declaration and not the actual implementation. All right. Okay, what did I want to show? All right, we have a tutorial wrapper, and we can get this from the game wrapper. I can look at the definition of the game wrapper, which is coming through the imports, and the game wrapper also has definitions, of course. So we can just walk through this and we can see the functions that the game wrapper has. And of course you can also just take a look at the direct, like at the includes, if you want to do that. But you can just navigate through it with IntelliSense too. So the game wrapper has functions like is in game, is in online game, is in tutorial, is in replay, is in custom training, is spectating an online game, stuff like that. And we can get things like this: get online game, get game as tutorial, get game as server, get game as replay, and this will have different permissions. So if you are getting an online game, you can obviously not change the position of your car. That won't be possible. But if you get game event as tutorial, then you get a tutorial wrapper returned, and that's what we're doing here. And that means we have way more permissions to act on this. So the tutorial wrapper can do a couple of things, which we can see again through IntelliSense. But yeah, let's see what it does. We have a float last bump, so that's the time of the last bump, I assume. And we're taking the training.getSeconds elapsed, so that's just the timer of the free play. And this timer doesn't go on, I believe, if you pause it. So the timer like this is running, and if you pause with the menu, then the timer is not going to keep running. That's the advantage of using this timer rather than any other C++ timer that you can use. So this calculates the time, and if our last bump is greater than the last cooldown time, makes sense, then we get the training. Okay, we use the training object, and we get the game car. So that's one of the functions of the tutorial wrapper. We can get the game car, which is now of type auto, but as you can see by hovering over it, it's a car wrapper. So a car wrapper allows us to do lots of stuff, like bump it around and set its position. So that's the stuff we are going to use to bump it around in a second. Okay, then we have the car. Then we do stuff like determining, is the car on ground or is the car on the wall? Then we're not going to bump the player. That is what the ground recovery plugin does. But now we actually want to do the exact opposite, right? So what we want to do is, if car is not on ground and is not on the wall, player is in the air, then we're going to execute the bump, which we need to still implement, and we're going to return the last cooldown time. And that is necessary because we have what exactly? Okay, right. We just want to get the... Okay, we basically defining the cooldown time of this execution to be used at the as the random number for the next execution, or that is quite weird. Okay, I don't know how it's implemented, but this is basically just implementation details, and as I said before, it's not about basically this is not a C++ tutorial. So yeah, if you're having trouble with implementing that kind of stuff, this is a bit, I didn't implement this and it's confusing me a bit, but obviously there are lots of ways to implement stuff like this. Set timeout will just call something on a delay, and that's one way to do it. This is what Bakkes did. The random will probably be, I don't know, standard random. And then I need to include random. Or is that not the part? Well, let's take a look at the code. Doesn't seem to be... Oh, that's part of the utils. Okay, so that's your own random function, or utils parser.h. Okay, that's where random is from. All right, so basically, if we were on the ground, then we're gonna return some random number as if like a bump was executed, but it's a low number and the bump wasn't actually executed. And then this is just if our cooldown didn't execute. Why are you adding 0.1 at the end there? So if last bump isn't greater than last cooldown time, then check again in 100 milliseconds. Okay, all right. Okay, that explains how the set timeout basically works also. So basically we say, yeah, call this in whatever time you just determined. And that is checking every 0.1 seconds again until the actual event happened. All right, that's one way to do it. When we do the 360-degree gravity, then we're gonna use definitely a different method of checking time, because we're gonna do something every tick anyway. So this isn't tick based, this is basically every 100 millisecond based. Why are we using floats? Yeah, Bakkes basically said it. It's just, yeah, basically the engine works with floats, so there's no really point in. I'm assuming you're talking about doubles, or. But I mean, the precision is really not needed for stuff like this, so it doesn't really matter at all. And now is the juicy part. That's the execution of the bump. All right. What do we need to do? Again, a lot of checks. Always checking is a good thing, otherwise your plugin could crash the game, possibly. So you don't want that to happen. Then once again, we are getting the game event as tutorial. And that's just the same thing we had here, except it was called different, I believe. Yeah, it's a tutorial wrapper, so it's again the same object. And then we're defining our vector, with which we're gonna bump the car in terms of torque. This is the torque vector, and this is the velocity vector, so how much we're gonna bump the car around. And the way Bakkes has implemented it, obviously we need to change all of these to air recovery. And right here too. The way Bakkes has implemented this is just a value between, well, it just generates an individual random number between the angular, for the angular x value, y value, z value, and the same for linear velocities. So that's also just an individual value generated for each direction. And you could do it differently, obviously. You could basically generate one value for the magnitude and then generate 3 random values for the direction, which are normalized then, and that would be a different way to do it, and probably a better way to do it if you want to do like some scientific testing or stuff. But if we're just doing, yeah, just random stuff, we can just change around the values that we want, right? We can just change the default bump speed, angular and linear velocity if we don't like the current values, and then we can basically achieve the same effect. And this one, well, first of all, this just generates a random value between 0 and 6 every time, 0 and 6, 0 and 6. And because we obviously want to be able to bump the player in one direction but also the other direction, this is just randomly rolling booleans, whether the sign of the the direction is going to be flipped. And my throat is really hurting right now, so I need to drink again. All right, so basically, instead of having 6, we could have 6 or minus 6. That's just what we're rolling there. So that's just random well, We're just determining the sign of the values. And yeah, for Z, the upwards direction, that's not true, because we're already generating a cVar that is randomly up or down. But we could actually change that, and I think we should, because if we say that the minimum value is minus 2300 and plus 2300, then the average magnitude is gonna be way lower, because the average magnitude is gonna be somewhere in the middle, and the middle of 2300 and minus 2300, well, if you roll something in the middle, it's 0. So there's a higher chance of getting 0. Or is there actually? I don't think there actually is. Wait, that actually makes no sense. I just contradicted myself. I should have thought that through. So yeah, we don't need that, but you could also roll it for Z and then just change the Z value so it only has a positive magnitude. And yeah, now the part where we get the game car, which we already did earlier here, to get to see if the car is on the wall or on the ground. This time though, we're gonna set the angular velocity. So we just use the car and there's a set angular velocity function. And what we do is we take the current, well, we don't do add to current. There's a function add to current you can see. First of all, we need to provide a vector, which we've just generated for the angular bump. And then we have Boolean, whether we want to use the current angular velocity we already have and add on top of that, or whether we were to just override the current angular velocity. And in this case, we just want to take the random value and override the current angular velocity. And then for the, just velocity, the linear velocity, we have the set velocity function, and we can add the linear bump vector on there. And that's gonna override the current velocity from the car, but not the angular velocity, but the linear velocity. But I do believe there's also a set linear velocity function. Or not. There is definitely also something similar, because there's also the ability to add to the current value. I know that for sure. I don't just know where this is right now, but we're gonna need that for our version of the gravity plugin. Alright. Not to think about now though. So last bump time gets overwritten then with the current bump, and the last cooldown time gets generated again, so we have a new cooldown time. Yeah, you didn't do it because downwards bumping on the ground doesn't make sense. That's of course very reasonable. I just did it by well, allowing negative values. Alright. So yeah, we're just saving the current bump time and overwriting the next random value. So the next random bump has a new time again. So this is basically, well, we have air recovery cooldown here, because obviously we wanted to make everything for air recovery. And other than that, this plugin should already work, because we just copied over code and went over it. Didn't do much ourselves, but we're gonna do much ourselves with the gravity plugin. So we can see that the reload did work properly, and that just means we need to start this plugin. And yeah, good thing we don't have it in the user interface. We can go over that afterwards, how we can get it into the user interface like this. But yeah, we can use the console, and we know it's air recovery start, just using the default values. And this should never bump me on the ground. Once I get into the air, it should start to bump me. Oh, there is the bump. It's of course now... Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, at 60 FPS this is actually harder than I thought. I thought this was for beginners, but... This is actually really hefty bumps. Ooh. Okay, so I got pretty unlucky at the beginning, I think. The ones at the beginning were really hard. None of them afterwards have been as hard, but it's definitely harder than I thought, to be quite honest. And it's definitely harder in windowed mode at 60 FPS. Also, with my PC running horrible performance because of streaming. This feels horrible. Oh, thank you for the donation, man. And congratulations on champion, man. That's nice to hear. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's pretty nice. This is working. And that's good to see. And yeah, if you want to tweak values like this, then you could do that, obviously. But it's definitely very weird, I have to say, to just lose control over your car and then you have to regain it really quick. So I definitely think, especially for worse players, they should definitely try to make it not too hard for themselves. And you have to make sure that you never stay too close to the ground, because it's literally gonna bump you so hard that you can't even recover at all, even if you do it perfectly. Like that. And obviously you don't just have to use this in free play. You could just use this stuff in workshop maps, where you have a lot of space and more room to recover, which is obviously going to make it easier. But if you're just trying to recover in general, I think I might have to restart this plugin now. But yeah, let's see. Or it doesn't work. But if it doesn't work, then we can change that by changing the plugin type, because it's definitely possible to make plugins work in workshop maps. So yeah, it doesn't work. So we're gonna have to figure out how to make it work in workshop maps. So apparently the current type we have, which is plugin type freeplay, does not work in workshop maps. So in this case, it would be very helpful if Bakkes happens to know which one we need, but otherwise we can use plugins that we know work in workshop maps and use those as an example. So which one do I know works in freeplay maps, workshop maps? I'm pretty sure this one has goals. And this one also has, yeah, this one has all of these plugins working. So the dribble plugin works in here, which is plugin type freeplay. Ah, okay. So the problem isn't the plugin type. Plugin type freeplay does work in here, but Bakkes is telling me that I can't use getGameEvent as tutorial, but I need to use getGameEvent as server. And this can't be here then either, I assume. Okay, so we actually need to change a couple of things if we want to make it work in workshop maps, but let's try that. So yeah, so basically this one doesn't need to be is in tutorial, but just is in game. I believe, because if you're in a tutorial, it's also in-game. This is just a higher category, as far as I know. And then where else? We have here is in-game. So all of this is just written for in-game. Yeah, is in-game is true for any offline mode. Okay, that's perfect explanation by Bakkes right there. Okay, and then we can't do this. He says, get game event as tutorial. We need get game event as server. And then we don't get a tutorial wrapper, but a server wrapper, I believe. Or do we get a different category? We can just look, right? Okay, the return value of this is server wrapper. So unless we need to cast it, yeah, that is it. And with server wrapper, we don't get game car. We get cars, which is an array wrapper of car wrapper. Which means we need to do... Can we just do this? Okay, get... This might break down, right? This could break down, but I do think as long as we're the only one in game, in offline modes, this should probably return our car. Okay, you could get the edge case where there's 0 cars. Okay, if your car hasn't spawned yet, basically. That's the problem. So, basically I can do auto cars equals this, and then if okay, yeah, but I can do then if cars dot count, that's a function too. Everything's a function with the wrappers. Okay, cars dot count is greater 0. Then I do wait, no. If it's equals 0, then I do return, right? So then I can define this here. And do cars dot get 0. And we get the first car in the game. What's the purpose of using the other one? There might be some stuff in tutorial wrapper that you don't get. So if I use IntelliSense on it, there are functions like set car spawn location. I don't know if all of these work. Sometimes these functions don't work and they are automatically generated by Bakkes because they're in-game functions. But yeah, for example, disable go reset, enable go reset. There are permissions that you don't have if you just use server wrapper, I believe. And yeah, these functions that you find under tutorial wrapper, they're not going to be available for the server wrapper in general. But yeah, the server wrapper is, as you can see, tutorial wrapper inherits everything from server wrapper. So anything that you can do with the server wrapper, you can do also with a tutorial wrapper. Don't forget to return a value. Oh, right, it's a float. Otherwise, we're returning something random. So would you tell me I should just return this random stuff then that you entered here? For some reason, I don't know quite why it's exactly that and why it's random, but yeah, we could have that same thing. So yeah, we have the game card here. And okay, so we can take this part, and now we need to have this one, and we have get game event as server. And we do the same part here. This one doesn't return anything, right? So it's just return server. We called this one car this time. That's not very... It's different every time, but it doesn't really matter. So yeah, the rest of the stuff seems to be working. I'm just gonna compile it, and if it crashes or BakkesMod, then so be it. Well, yep, shouldn't have done that. Alright, first of all, this is still in tutorial. This should be is in game. But that shouldn't have crashed it, right? So let's take a look at this. So one thing, usually Rocket League copy pastes crash dump into your clipboard, so you can just take a look at that. You have no clue. And as you can see, it crashed somewhere on BakkesMod viewport tick. So the viewport tick probably has something to do with the set timeout function, I would say. But because I believe the set viewport okay. So yeah, it's something with the timeouts probably. So there are still callbacks executed while I'm unloading the plugin, so or something. That's Bakkes' idea, so that could have been it, because I believe I didn't turn the plugin off a second ago. So that's probably not the best idea. So yeah, okay. Right now the plugin isn't loaded, by the way. That's completely normal, of course, because we haven't added it to the plugins.cfg file in the BakkesMod folder, as I've showed in the last video. So if you want to add a plugin permanently from the start of the game, then you need to add it there. But yeah, we're still developing, so we don't need that, because we're going to reload it anyway through all kinds of ways. So yeah, air recovery start. So this still works completely fine. Let's just see if this is gonna crash if I don't disable it. I want to see that. And if this crashes again while going into a workshop map, then I will okay, so it's not crashing for now at least. But yeah, unloading this while it's active is probably not the good idea. But yeah, okay, it doesn't seem to bump me. Oh, right, I didn't recompile yet with the latest. So yeah, now I'm gonna turn it off though, because we just saw that. Oh, I think I also forgot to change the name of recovery stop. So this needs to be a recovery stop, of course. I hope that recovery stop stops both. I don't know how this is implemented if multiple plugins are using the same cVar. But yeah, okay. Basically, the reason it probably didn't work is because I didn't recompile after changing this, so the execute bump didn't actually execute. Okay, game seems to still be running. That's the good part. Now we have air recovery stop too. That's good. And we can start it now. Yep, and we're getting bumped. So yeah, this map obviously only has more vertical space, but that should be alright since, I mean, I set the horizontal values pretty low. But you can of course also use a different map, like the dribble challenge 2, where you have basically infinite space. But yeah, that's a working plugin. And yeah, that's good. Okay, we didn't really code much ourselves, but there is a part that we haven't discussed yet, and that is the user interface, right? Ideally, you would want to have your plugin show up in this plugins tab, but it currently doesn't. And for that, you need to generate setting files, which we can also see just an example. So in the plugins folder, ignore the commands thing, that's some old stuff from me. Settings, and there are all these settings files, and we have a recovery plugin.set. And since we basically copied over that plugin, we can also basically copy over that set file. And we only need to change a couple of things. Yeah, recovery plugin. And I'm going to open this with a text editor. Hey guys, thanks. Alright, this is pretty confusing if you don't know what it is. And as far as I last talked to Bakkes, there is no good documentation for this. So that should probably be changed. But the basic idea that you have here is just first the name, which is the name that shows up here. And what else do we have? We have a 2 here. And what we see here is the angular bump speed, which means this type of element is the number 2. And that's the part that isn't documented at all. Because, yeah, I know that 0, for example, is a checkbox, is a button. 1 is a check. I'm actually not sure. 1 might not be a checkbox. I'm going to look those up in a second, and I can show you a couple more. But yeah, for now, this is basically just, this is the general structure is first you get the number for the type of element that you give, and yeah, you need to know that. Then there is the label right here. The label needs to be different every time. You can't have 2 elements with the same label, but you can fix that if you do like hashtag 123 at the end, for example. Then you could put 2 things with the same label, because the part after the hashtag doesn't show up, so you can put one with a different number. Then afterwards we have the variable, so the cVar, or the command that is called when you use that element. So in this case, we want to change the angular bump speed, which is defined by the air recovery bump speed angular. That's the value. And then we define the minimum and the maximum, because this is a slider. So yeah, this is going to be exactly the same as the stuff you can already see here. But actually, Bakkes file makes no sense, because this should never be negative, because the way it's implemented, it doesn't even allow for negative numbers. So it should be 0 to 6. We're going to fix that in our version. And then we have linear bump speed. Once again, we need to change the name to air recovery bump speed. And this has a 3 next to it. I have no clue where the difference is between these two. I think it might be because this one has a different formatting. The first one has 3 digits after 3 digits more, I guess. But yeah, this is also just a slider. Description again the cVar, the minimum value, the maximum value. The minimum value should clearly be 0 and not 1. I mean, and I already said 2300 is our maximum, so let's just put that there too. And well, in our case, the Z velocity can already also be negative, so I'm gonna set the minimum there too. Also gonna make sure that all the cVars are named correctly. The cooldown time can be the same. Yeah, 0 to 10 seconds is fine. And then yeah, we have a button for start where we are gonna call air recovery start. And 7 just means that the next thing is going to be in the same line. So the stop button should just be right next to it like this. So yeah, all we need to do now, because I've already saved this file, is call a command. And that's called cl settings refresh plugins. If you call this command, I can actually call it while the console is open. Wait, what? cl settings refresh plugins, and boom, now we have the air recovery plugin also here, and we can set it the way we want. So now just click stop to make sure it's actually what we wanted, then go into this, and now we can start this through here, through the buttons, and it should bump me. I sure hope. Unless this map actually doesn't work. This map might just not work in general. Let me confirm that. Otherwise our thing doesn't work. We've already seen that it does work on this map. Okay, started it. Doesn't seem to be running, so our set file is somehow broken. Probably didn't change something properly. So what could we have screwed up? So pressing this button should call air recovery start. Is that correct? Air recovery start. Seems alright to me. Anything in the console? Doesn't seem to be. No, if I use the recovery plugin and click start, then it doesn't appear in the console either though. So well, not in that version. It's probably appearing in the other. No, it doesn't appear in the other one either. So I'm wondering right now whether there's no start button in any plugin except for, no, the Defender plugin has also a start button, but I can try that just in case, because we have a different plugin with a start button. I'm gonna try to make sure that this label is unique so it works. Okay, so we need to refresh plugins again. Okay, let's make sure that it actually still works and I didn't somehow, I don't know, screw up the mod through other ways. Well, apparently it doesn't still work. I have no clue how it doesn't work anymore, but it doesn't seem to work anymore. So that's good. Okay, let's see. This should be off. Okay, let's turn it back on. Okay. Oh, wait, what? Just bumped me. But that was wait, that was way more than 6 seconds, right? Or am I imagining stuff? Okay. Anyway, let's make sure stop button works. Okay, not bumping me. So the stop button definitely works. Yeah, and the stop button definitely works too. Instantly bumped me. That was weird. So apparently sometimes with the way it's programmed, you need to make sure that it's actually stopped properly before you can start it again. Well, anyway, so yeah, we do have this now, and I think when we create the custom gravity, we're gonna take a look at what the actual numbers mean, because yeah, these are just examples. And I'm gonna be right back. I need to pee real quick. Alright, I'm back. And yeah, I didn't need this. Pretty sure I didn't. Because yeah, there is already the Defender plugin, which also has a start and stop button, and it works at the same time. And as far as I'm aware, it doesn't have... yeah, it doesn't have any hashtags either. Alright, so we're done with one plugin, but it was mostly copying. So let's actually do something ourselves. So let's try and just go from scratch again and try it faster this time. So this time, new project, Windows, well, not Windows Universal, just general empty project, browse and go to this, and we're gonna create our custom, well, no need to call a custom gravity plugin. Gravity plugin explains everything, I think. Yeah, empty plugin. Lol Arduino. I mean, I've done a lot of stuff with Arduino, so alright, gravity plugin. I just noticed that I don't need to create this folder, because it's automatically generating a folder. So I don't want a folder inside a folder. So let's get rid of this. Select this folder. I don't have a face cam. I'm sorry. Alright, we have a completely empty project this time. So first thing first, I'm gonna go to release up here. Then I'm gonna go to properties again. This time, because it's empty, we're gonna have to change this to dynamic link library under configuration type. Then we have, wait, how do I even add additional linking directories? Wait, not linking, include directories, but I can already add additionally link library directories. Okay, I need to create a CPP file first. Okay, so let's do that. New item. This is gravity plugin. And gravity plugin.h. Then we go back to properties, right? C++, additional include directories. And apply, and then we need the custom, the build post build event. And we can copy that over from here because I don't know the exact, wait, not solution. I don't know the exact directory. Post build event. All right. Pick C++ class. Nah, I'm doing empty everything now, Bakkes. I learned my lesson. Everything is empty now. All right. We're starting from scratch. So we need everything we have in here, which is first of all these includes. We're gonna need that for every mod. Just the regular BakkesMod includes. And then we're gonna create a class for our plugin. Class tutorial. Wait, my brain is turned to mush already. Class gravity plugin, and that's basically inheriting everything from BakkesMod plugin. BakkesMod plugin. That is correct. We don't know yet. Well, the only part we know is the onload and unload part. The rest isn't sure. So yeah. Then in here we will include gravity plugin.h, obviously, and we're gonna implement these methods. Okay, so this is our working plugin already, right? That does nothing, but it works. Let's run the script. Succeeded. Let's check the console. Could not load plugin gravity plugin. The plugin is not most likely not declared. Yeah, right. Because we didn't declare it. I forgot about that one important line, which is at the very top right here. And we need to put that right here. Yeah, the exports. I'm doing it because gravity plugin. All right, custom gravity plugin. And okay, the plugin type you said it does actually nothing. So this is just basically to show up here. Let me check. Okay, that worked. All right. It doesn't show up here, but doesn't really matter. All right. This time, we don't need these complicated things. Basically, what we want to do with Gravity plugin is, first of all, we want the ability to turn the Gravity plugin on and off. So that's one value. And then we want the ability to determine the strength of the gravity. That's another cVar we need. And then we need two values to determine the direction. Because I think the best way to do the direction is by using angles. And you would need two angles, the azimuth, and I don't actually know what's pronounced like, but we need basically these two angles to describe the direction of gravity, just like we would describe a point on Earth. So yeah, that's 4 cVars in total, and can go ahead and just create those. So we need the cVar manager, and we want to register a cVar, and we can see the auto completion is very helpful here. And we're gonna put the name, which is well, we have to decide on our naming structure here, and in this case I'm just gonna go with gravity because I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And most of the plugins don't have like a precursor like SV for server. So that's that part. So I'm gonna call it gravity on, which just means gravity plugin on. The default value is gonna be 0. Because by default we don't want the plugin to be on, we just want regular gravity, right? And then the description determines if the custom gravity is turned on. Then we want it to be searchable. We want it to have a minimum value. That minimum value is 0. We want it to have a maximum value. That maximum value is 1. And yeah, I don't need this, but I like putting everything in there. So it's getting saved. Wait, actually, I don't want this to be saved. Because if someone is playing around with custom gravity and then they close down Rocket League and next time they start up Rocket League, they don't want the custom gravity again. So I'm actually gonna set this to false, and that's gonna mean it's not gonna save that. All right. Then we have cVar manager, and we're gonna register cVar for gravity strength. It's good. The default value is gonna be all right. Thanks. I need to change that binding. I don't know why OBS has binding for my I think yeah, 6 is mute. That's not the best binding. All right. Yeah, why is the default 650? I said that while I was muted. Because that's the default gravity strength in Rocket League. So if I go right in the normal game, you can see it's minus 650 because it's downwards acting the gravity, but our custom plugin will just use 650 by default. And because it can change the direction and the magnitude, we want the magnitude and the direction to be both the default value, and then you can change it from there. Don't want the default value to already be something weird. So yeah, I gave a description. It should be searchable. It should have a minimum, absolutely, because we don't want to go below 0 gravity. Because yeah, we want to change the direction, not by changing the value below 0, but actually changing the direction. Well, that was pretty confusing, but yeah. Anyway, maximum, let's just set something before it becomes completely unreasonable. So 5,000. There's really no reason to ever go over that. Just breaking the game if you go higher. And this should be saved though, because if some player has a certain setting, I want to play like 300 gravity usually, then they should be able to turn the mod on and it should save the gravity strength from last time. So next time, next one, gravity. Okay. And now we need to make sure that our math is kinda alright. So we have this angle, and that one will have a value between 0 and 360 degrees. So we need to define the cVar in a way that it works properly for that. In our case, the default value, I don't know, could be 0. Doesn't really matter. Because when it's downwards, it doesn't matter anyway, if it's straight down. Then this is the gravity direction. And then we want the searchable. Minimum is 0. Maximum is 360, because that's the system most people are used to. Want to use it in degrees. And then we need a different angle, which is called, it's not usually called altitude, right? I forgot the name of that. Longitude and latitude. That would be different naming. Is it actually called altitude? I probably just don't know because I'm German. And it's called something different if it's called altitude in English. Yeah, I'm going to teach you the way of bind to in a second. Alright, what do we need? More images. It's actually called altitude, right? Apparently. Alright. Then we're gonna call it altitude. The default value is gonna be 0, right? Because we want default to be down, and 180 is gonna be, wait, no, default is gonna be minus 90, right? So we're gonna have plus 90, which is yeah, which is at the top, and minus 90, which is at the bottom. All right, so default is gonna be minus 90. Then the minimum is minus 90, the maximum is plus 90. All right, those are our cVars. And yeah, what we want to do is not always, we don't always want to recalculate all the values. So what we want to do in a second is actually recalculate the direction and strength of gravity that the game has to apply per tick. We want to calculate that once when the values change, and not when the game has to actually apply the thing, because that the game has to apply the gravity every tick, and there's no reason to actually do all the calculations every tick. That's just overkill. Okay, so we want to do a couple of things. We want to make sure that when gravity is turned on, we want to make sure that actually it has any effect. So in order to do that, we need to make bind this cVar to something, which I'm gonna use an example now, because again, I'm not the most experienced with this. So let's see, what can we use? Surely some of these have binds in them. Maybe Bakkes knows some examples. I mean, asking whether the car is a good car doesn't really make sense at this point in Rocket League. They're all good. They're all usable. Okay, I'm pretty sure this one has some binds that I can use an example. So whenever you want to do something and you don't know how to do it, it's best to look at the plugins that exist already. Because as you can see, these are doing something after registering a cVar. So if you call register cVar, it returns the cVar, I believe. And then you can do bind to with that cVar. And let's just try that. This is the wrong plugin. Let's do bind to. And then we need to bind it to a certain value. All right. This is a Boolean because we can turn this either on or off. And yeah, this will, but wait a second. This is actually not the binding I want. I want to actually call a function when this is changed. So I'm sure I'm opening the wrong plugin again. Let's take a look at the cVar manager. See if we can figure it out ourselves. Okay, cVar manager wrapper. We have, okay, register notifier, register cVar, which returns a cVar. And what can a cVar do? We can go, exactly, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for add-on value changed. So if a player changes the value of the cVar, in our case, whether the gravity plugin is on, then I want to enable it. So I want to actually change something and not just, well, I don't just want to basically change a value. I actually need to do something with it. So in order to call a function, then I want to do add-on value changed, and we can pass a function right here to the add-on value changed. So in the ball prediction function is actually an example here. Where is the example though? Oh, right here. I'm blind. Right. This is the same thing basically. This cVar is intended to be turned on or off. And it has add-on value changed. And it's gonna call this one. This function on prediction on predict on value changed, which is defined somewhere here. So if we want to do this, then we need to create a function that has some specifics, I believe. And it gets the old value as a string and the cVar wrapper. So, okay. Basically, we want to do the same thing that happens in this plugin, which means we need to create a function that we can call. All right. The type is void, and we have this where we have the name on change active. I'm gonna call it that. Well, on change active, so whether the plugin is active, we want to get this. And then we want to actually create a definition for this. And then we should be able to bind this. Well, we should be able to put this function for this cVar, so it actually gets called. Just like this, add on value changed, and then we do standard bind. So I'm gonna copy this part because I'm not experienced with how exactly this function stuff works. Obviously, we're not using the ball prediction plugin here. We're using the gravity plugin, not pickup plugin. And on change active. All right. So we have two placeholders because the function expects two arguments, the string old value and the cVar wrapper. And yeah, we're using the standard bind to make it work, and that part is part that I don't really understand, as I said. But we don't really need to, we just need to make sure that we know this principle and we can call this function. So we can, first of all, do things here. So we can get the new value of the cVar, or we can get the old value. And basically, if I do old value, wait, no, that's not what I wanted. If old value dot, isn't there? Dot compare, right? That's it. Dot compare. If the old value was 0, so if it was off, then we do one thing. And we need to make sure that it just wasn't just off, but the actual new value is on. So in order to get that, we do get cVar gravity on. get bool value. So this just checks, was it 0? Oh, right. I always forget that. I have to compare returns 0 if it was successful. So I need to make equals 0, otherwise it's completely the opposite. Just use the cVar argument. Wait. Oh, right. Wait, cVar. Oh. I'm stupid. Right, I thought for some reason this would be the cVar manager wrapper, because it says wrapper after, but this is just the cVar, which is in this function. So you get the old value and the new value, and I take the new value as boolean, because this is a boolean cVar. So this is going to be true if it was previously 0 and it's now 1. Then we want to hook an event, but I'm going to do that after this, because we haven't hooked event yet. And we have else if, and we're just going to copy this over. If it changed from 1 to 0, then we have an unhook. But okay, do we have some hooking examples? Yeah, we do actually have a hooking example right here. Okay, so what we did with the last mod, with the last plugin, was we just basically defined our own set timeout function that gets called after X amount and stuff like that. Or we could change stuff in the mod by calling a cVar or a notifier. But in this case, we actually want to make sure that the mod does something when a game event happens. And because we want to change gravity, that actually that game event should happen every physics tick. And for that, we need game events that trigger every physics tick. And one such event is function ta game car underscore ta set vehicle input, and this actually gets called every physics tick. And we actually don't know another function right now that gets called every physics tick exactly. So what we want to do is basically copy this idea. So we have the game wrapper, which can hook events. And in here, we just put the string of the game function that we want to use. Now, you're wondering, where do you get this game function? And, well, first of all, you can copy again from the plugins that already exist. And otherwise, there is an option to get all game events by, well, it requires two things. If you go to your BakkesMod directory and you add a, wait, do you need to add the debug.txt? So you need to create debug text file. Either, I already have one, either in here or in the Win32 folder. Bakkes would have to confirm which one it is. I think it's the Win32 folder. And then if you start Rocket League through Steam with the launch options, you can change launch options, and you can add the launch option -debug. And if you do that, and you have the debug.txt file, I'm not going to do that now, but if you do that with the debug launch options, and you have the debug.txt file in the BakkesMod folder, Bakkes just confirmed that, so it needs to be in this folder just like I have it, then you have a command which is called debug dump events, I believe, but it's not available right now because I haven't started with the with the debug option. But I believe it's debug_dump events. Or something similar. Otherwise, I can put that in the description too at the end of the stream. Yeah, and make sure that you don't do this usually. This is just for getting these events, because if you have this debug text file and you start with the debug text with the debug game option, then the game will lag. Okay, the commands are called debug dump events and debug clear events, as stated by Bakkes. Alright, so with debug clear events, you can basically clear the event history, and debug dump events, you can save them to the debug.txt file. So what you can do is basically call debug clear events, and then after you've called debug clear events, you can then perform any action which should trigger the event that you want, and then you call debug dump events, and it's going to write all events into a file, all events.txt in win32 apparently. So it's not going to be in the debug.txt file, it's actually going to land in the win32 folder in this file, all events.txt. And then you get usually a really long list of events, because the game triggers a lot of events. A lot of events. And what all of these events mean, I can't tell you, and I don't think anyone can tell you for all events. I mean, some people might know a couple of events, and if they've used them in their plugins before, then you can ask them. But yeah, there are so many events that there's no way to know all of them. And yeah, you don't, I mean, there are sometimes, a lot of them, I must say, they are describing themselves pretty well, but some of them are really impossible to understand. So yeah, you're gonna have to just test them, I guess, because yeah, I don't know, no one knows all of them. Alright, as I said, I'm gonna use setVehicleInput because I've used that before, and that's gonna get called once per physics tick per car. So if you have multiple cars, it would be called multiple times per physics tick. In that case, we would have to do some extra checks, but in a normal scenario, in offline games, you're not gonna play in split screen or something like that, so there's only gonna be one car, and then you can play with custom gravity with this just fine, because yeah, it's only gonna be one car anyway. Gravity plugin, and right, we need a different function. Now this is just change active. We actually need to bind this tick to a function that applies the gravity. And so we're gonna create another function, void apply gravity. Doesn't need any parameters because it's just gonna check the values we have anyway. That's something every programmer has. Well, yeah, but often you have like autocomplete and stuff like this, and basically there is basically no information on these functions that you have. So you just have the name to go by. Alright, so apparently I need one parameter. Right, okay, it passes the event name. So we have string event name. So oops. All right, of course, otherwise we wouldn't have this placeholder here. And yeah, so we are gonna put the apply gravity right there, and we have this binding, which means this event gets hooked by the game wrapper, and every time the game calls function car set vehicle input, then our function is gonna get called too. So yeah, we can call that on every physics tick, so we can apply gravity on every physics tick like we need to. So that's all good. Then all we need is game wrapper unhook in case we turn the plugin off. So then we don't want to do that anymore. Just gonna use the same stuff here. Is that all? Yeah, only needs one parameter. So this is gonna unhook the event if we're turning the plugin off. And yeah, this is good. We need one more step though, because obviously Rocket League has gravity by default. And if we want to create our own gravity, we want to turn off the default gravity. And the easiest way to do that is to just use the BakkesMod commands, which you can call right here. So we can use the cVar manager, and I believe we use get cVar, and then we use SV soccer gravity, which is the cVar for this. And then we can do change value or something else, set value. All right, set value. And then we can set it to 0.0001 because that will make the gravity essentially 0. You can try that just in the console. And this is 0 gravity. And it's not just essentially 0 gravity, it's actually 0 gravity because gravity is so weak that it's never going to affect the car at all. Because Rocket League works in distinct physics step, and if the gravity is so small, then it can't even make a difference at all, because it's never going to reach basically a higher level of speed. It's always going to stay at the same speed and not be enough to get the next level of speed, basically. Alright, so that is that, and when we turn the mod off, we just assume that the player wants default gravity, which is minus 650. So we're just going to do that. And this should all still work, and hopefully not crash our game. And what we should already be doing now is when we turn this mod on, well, we have gravity off right now, so we're gonna set it back to default. Now if we do gravity on to 1, as you can see, it already turns default gravity off. We're now in a 0 gravity environment, so all we need to do now is apply the new gravity. And yeah, we can also turn it off, of course. And we are back to normal gravity. So that's all working great. Now, apply gravity. We had cars already last time. And in order to get the car, we needed to go through the game wrapper. And we wanted to get the game event as server. But first we should probably check if not game wrapper is in game. So if we're not in a game right now, then we want to return because we can't apply gravity outside of a game. If we're in a game, we want to get the game event as server, and then we want to get all objects in the server. So first of all, we want the cars, which we already had in tutorial plugin, and then afterwards we want to change the ball too. But yeah, we can do that afterwards. Obviously, you could also use this to set different gravity on the ball and the car. in theory, because we're doing it manually now. First, I'm only going to apply it to the car. So yeah, we're going to use the same method to get the car here from the last plugin we created. So we're going to get all cars by using, well, I need to actually save this auto server. And then we need to do server.getCars. And then if cars count is 0, return again. Whoops. All right. So now we have our game car. And because this is called every tick. Ah, okay. In this case, we don't even need to do this with the cars count, because we're hooking the function of the car underscore TA. So there has to be a car in the game. Absolute guarantee that the car is in the game. Otherwise, this wouldn't be called. So we don't actually have to make this check, in theory. But it's not really gonna make a difference in terms of performance, even though it gets called every tick. But it's not that important. All right. There is also a way, I believe, to get the actual car through the hook. So because this is a hook event of the car, you can actually get the car object from the hook, but this is not really well documented for the mods, so it's easier to just go the usual way, basically do it the same every time. All right, so car, we want to do what? We want to change the velocity. So I believe add velocity is the function I was actually looking for last time, or not. Okay, so now I want to actually take a look at this though, because I do believe there is a velocity function which changes the car velocity while preserving the already existing velocity. And that is what we want to do, because right now we don't want to abruptly stop the car and move it in a certain location. We want to actually just change the car velocity by the amount that the gravity changes it. Is getCars.getZero the same as GameWrapper getLocalCar? GameWrapper has getLocalCar as a function. That is really interesting. I assume so, but Bakkes would have to confirm that. And I'm surprised that Bakkes hasn't told me this earlier. I didn't know that was such an easy way to get the car. But I would assume that that returns exactly the same object. All right, let me check this. So auto-generated from fields, auto-generated from functions. I want this. Okay, in this case, we have the problem. I know this function exists because I've already worked with it, but you have to keep always keep in mind that this car wrapper is just inherited from vehicle wrapper. So there are a lot more functions in vehicle wrapper. And the function I'm looking for might be in vehicle wrapper, or it might even be in RB state wrapper or something like that. Okay, it's not here either. I'm looking for a function that RB actor wrapper, that it should be here. So there should be a set. Okay, apparently it's not. It might also not be exported. I just know this function from the core of BakkesMod and not from the plugins. Okay, maybe it's an actor wrapper. Yeah, I know I can do it in a different matter, but there's definitely such a function because it's the default function to set it through the core. You can just pass an argument to it in the same way you can pass an argument to the angular velocity change here. Because I've tried creating custom gravity before, but it wasn't properly implemented. Yeah, but anyway, okay. So even if this function exists, we don't have it right now. So if we want to just change the velocity of the car, we can call setVelocity. The problem, if we just call setVelocity with a vector, for example, 0, 0, minus 650, that's gonna mean that the car has minus 650 negative velocity every tick. It doesn't matter what your input is, you can't control your car, you can't do anything. And that's obviously not what we intended. So what we have to do is first get car.getVelocity, and then we add our change in velocity to the current velocity. So we have to do that math ourselves. And then we create our own gravity. I'm just gonna set my own value right here manually. And we have minus 650 divided by 120 per physics tick. And this should then velocity. Vector adding is defined, right? Just plus, yeah, it's defined. Operator plus, okay. So I can just put set velocity, velocity plus gravity. And this, what I've just written down here is basically I get the current velocity, I take the gravity for this physics tick and add it on top of the velocity of the previous tick. And yeah, basically I get the new velocity. Just simple vector math, and this is just hard-coded default gravity. So if this works properly, then now if I turn our gravity plugin on, nothing should change. On. That is good. Feels exactly like normal gravity to me, even though if you open the menu, for example, well, apparently not. Oh, I'm stupid. It's cVar, of course. I need to change it to 1. Okay. So it's definitely not working. And for example, first of all, you can see that clearly the ball moving. Okay, so potential thing could just be maybe gravity is way too high. So in order to make sure that can't be the case, let's just set it to 100 and see what happens if I let's turn it on again. Okay, if I'm on the ground, the jumps are completely broken. Okay, so this is perhaps not as easy as you might think. And I think part of the problem is how Rocket League handles ground interactions. Let's look at the science plugin. So, yeah, it actually is broken. If you look at the linear velocity here at the top left, that is going pretty crazy and it's going up and down. And you can see what happens if I turn the plugin off. Rocket League works like this. It's stable at 8.4. So the game basically acts as if you constantly have an upwards velocity, even if you're on the ground, of only 8 Unreal units per second. So it's not much, but it's kind of weird with how the sticky forces and the gravity works. It causes some weird behavior. And this is kind of unfortunate. Because apparently it means that it breaks just adding stuff. The question is if I can even fix this. That could be a very bad problem. Because as I said, I tried this before, but I had the different function. Let me try to get in the air. If it's even... Whoa, okay, it's way stronger even in the air. I can't even fight against it. I don't know why it's so much stronger than default gravity. Let's see if it's somewhere exactly twice as strong. Would and is on ground check work? No, not at all. Because then you would have 0 gravity on the ground, which is completely different behavior. Or unless you're saying I should make default gravity as long as someone is on the ground, but that's really weird once you start using a different direction of gravity, because it doesn't behave at all like you expect it to. Oh, okay, this entire behavior feels really, really weird. Maybe I'm just thinking about this completely wrong. So the game has an acceleration value of minus 650 Unreal units per second squared. So every physics tick, I need to add 650th. Well, 650 divided by 120, right? In theory. But yeah, Bakkes, the one I'm talking about, the function. You can open this here and see exactly. This is exactly basically what I mean. Because this set angular velocity function has this bool add to current. And you have this self-implemented. But you don't have it self-implemented for set velocity. Well, you also have it self-implemented for set velocity, but you don't have the bool add to current. So I can't add to current, basically. But yeah, okay, so I'm at what? No, this feels very, very wrong as a whole. It doesn't feel right at all. I think the problem is with forces in general. That's why I can't make it like this, because basically what I'm doing right now is taking the previous physics tick and just subtracting gravity, and then the force doesn't change. Add velocity. Didn't I try that already? Okay. Alright, I tried that, but I didn't actually try it out. So let's try it with add velocity. Okay. Alright. So this should work. Whoa, 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 whoa. What just happened? Okay, that's not the first time this happens, by the way, Bakkes, to me. That I used the reload script and it's broken. Okay, this is now half the gravity. Seems a bit weird, but let me first try it with proper gravity before I make any statements. Okay, it's definitely better. It's definitely not the same because as I already showed at the top here, the linear velocity is around 8 with normal gravity. I think part of that problem is though because prediction doesn't work. Definitely feels off though. I think it's because the game is predicting as if I have 0 gravity, but I don't actually have 0 gravity. I actually have more gravity. It's definitely playable though, but it seems kind of weird. Might just be in my head though. But it's definitely not like completely broken now. But I think this last part might just not be fixable, because that's just how the game works. And I know if you use default gravity, but you turn it upside down, inverse, then the ceiling behavior is also different than what you get on the ground. So yeah, I can definitely tell that, for example, on the entire sticky walls, should be pretty obvious. If I fly onto the wall, I just bounce off. The entire sticky wall concept doesn't work. Usually you stick to the walls. So without the regular gravity, the sticky walls don't really work. And Rocket League feels a lot different. But this is for mainly aerial practice, right? You're gonna use this in custom maps to train with weird gravity directions. So instead of just contemplating whether this is a good thing, we're gonna just continue working on this for now. And this is very weird because the ball doesn't get affected by gravity right now. But we are. Okay. Okay, so we have this, and then we also want to get all balls, which we haven't done before, so let's just look at an example where we need to get the ball. And that should also be happening in the ball prediction plugin. So what this guy, aka, I don't think Bakkes actually wrote this, but I'm not sure. Wait, though, he did actually write this, but he used some like helper code from Chip that actually predicts this stuff. So yeah, we want to get balls. We have game event as server, and we can get game.getBall apparently. So let's try that. Auto ball equals game.get server, in my case, .get ball. Alright, and then we do ball dot add velocity gravity. So we compile this, and then we need to turn it on, and now ball should be lying roughly like regular Rocket League, but it could be that some bounces are different too, because I don't actually know how the bounces exactly get calculated, and we're using different forces and stuff like that. And I do believe that the physics engine that Rocket League uses internally has like a way to cue forces, and we're not actually doing the same thing as that. And that's what makes part of this stuff different. Try dribbling. That's not tough. Doesn't feel... well, actually it does feel like the ball is slightly lighter. But again, might also be in my head. It's also terrible performance. Windowed. Constantly dropping to 20 FPS and 60 FPS default. It's probably all just very slightly off. But yeah, anyway, so we got fake gravity working now. Now the actually interesting part, why you would want to use it, is to actually change the direction, right? And the strength. So we need to change this vector, gravity. So I'm gonna crash if I score with scoring enabled. That is probably true because I'm not checking if the ball exists. I probably need to do that right here, right? If ball. How do I do that though? Or does it get ball crash already? Ball is null. Okay, that's your check. Alright, so guys, of course, if we score, the ball gets exploded. So there isn't gonna be a ball. And the server get ball function is gonna return a null object. So to prevent that crash, when we try to add a velocity to nothing, we need this. Alright, with the car this can't happen because, as we said before, this hooks to a car event. So the car event wouldn't happen. Okay, let's turn scoring on. Wait, let's not turn scoring on because I didn't actually update the plugin. I didn't actually. Okay, now it's recompiled. Turn gravity on. Turn scoring on. Works. Alright. ball still affected? Yeah, ball is still affected by gravity. All right. That's all good. Yeah. Now we want to change the magnitude and direction of gravity. So, for that, I'm gonna create an update gravity function. That we're just gonna call on every single one of the cVar changes. And then we're gonna make a private vector gravity. And oh, exactly. I need to these parameters because we're doing we're not hooking an event, but we're actually doing add-on value change again. Whoops, wrong button. Created the definition of this. All right. And then we want add-on value changed on all of these. But not on change active. We want update gravity. All right. All right, so all of these are gonna call update gravity whenever they get changed. And then all we need to do in update gravity is actually calculate the correct vector. Well, gravity, that's the vector. And this needs to be, well, the correct vector then. So for that we need to do some math. And first I would like to ask Bakkes again, because I'm not sure, does it instantly call this function when this cVar is loaded? Probably not, right? So at the beginning of this plugin, when it's loaded, we probably need to call update gravity once, like this. And pass some stuff that we don't care about. Or is that not necessary? Ah, okay, I can call cVar manager again. That's a bit more. So I can manually trigger a cVar. So yeah, I'm gonna do like gravity strength. And then I can do the following: notify. No, dot notify. All right. And this is basically gonna tell the cVar manager that this cVar has been changed or updated or whatever. Basically just makes sure that the add-on value changed function is called once we have set all the default values at the beginning. And then we're gonna calculate the new gravity. So we have the magnitude, of course, which is gonna be a multiplier. We have whoops, load tick rate. Just gonna assume this is 120 for now. But this could be checked, I guess. I'm not sure if it's possible through the plugins though. Okay, then we have the directions. So Circular coordinates. Spherical, that's the name I was looking for. Okay, we're using spherical coordinates basically in this case. And well, we can use some basic math, which is probably already on Wikipedia, to transform this into Cartesian coordinates, because that's what we need. So that's actually really simple, because all you need is x direction is r times sine of theta and cosinus of theta. So phi actually. Theta and phi. Oh, I'm so confused by these English versions of these Greek letters. It's so confusing whenever I listen to English lectures, because I read physics lectures in German, and yeah, it sounds completely different at least. Yeah, so all we need to do is calculate this vector with this rule. So we need x equals well, let's just get these values once. Float r equals cvar manager get cvar. We want gravity strength. And then we want to get a float value, please. Then do this again for the angles, theta and phi, which are, theta is oh right, polar angle is theta. That was what I was looking for. I should have searched for spherical coordinates earlier. So I'm gonna rename this. Alright, so as you can see from this graphic, the phi angle is the horizontal, which goes around 360 degrees. And the theta is the polar angle, which is, yeah, if you're at the north or south pole, or any angle in between. So, yep. What we need here is, therefore, gravity polar, gravity azimuth, and yeah, we want to transform this to radians, of course, because that's what you use with computer math and anywhere. So we need to divide by 360 and multiply by pi, right? I don't know if pi is defined. Is there like math.pi, math pi or something defined? Not, we can probably just copy it. But we're gonna need some include cmath anyway. I think it's in there. Okay, let's just Google. Probably somewhere. Oh, it's in math.h. That's actually the one I was looking for anyway. So it's m_pi. Wait, what? Is it not? Use math defines. Apparently I need that. All right. All right, it's defined now. Yeah. So we're converting this to radians. And then we can just use these formulas. Wait, where was I? There. R times what is again in math.h? So I do actually need cmath, right? I'm always confused with these, where all these includes are. I usually Google every time. This is a different programming language too, right? C++ sign. Math.h. What? Am I blind? Okay. It's just sign. Okay. Well, good one by me. Cosine of phi. That was the correct formula, if I... Good thing. I don't actually need cmath. Let's get rid of that. So, yeah. That should be that. Y, Z. And then that's, I believe, just times sine of theta, if my memory is correct. Nope. I was completely wrong about everything. That's good. This is actually cosine of theta. Okay, and then gravity is just x, y, z. All right. Let's test this. I'm not sure what the direction is, but it doesn't feel quite right. Wait. Was this just the... Actually, I think it's straight down. Yeah, it does seem straight down. So that part seems right. I am not sure if the strength is correct though, but that might just be the... Let's see if it's the same as... Yeah, it does seem to be. Does seem to be the same strength. So yeah, let's just try changing gravity, the polar angle. Wait, what? What no match found? Which plugin is even that? I haven't written. Might be the science plugin. How is no match found? This is confusing. I haven't written press tab. What? Oh. Oh, that's cool. I guess the console got confused. So it was about the console not finding autocomplete. Alright, so my current value for gravity polar is minus 90. So if I just turn this to 0. Oh, this is working great. Wait, is gravity even on? It isn't. What? It is on. Wait a second. Okay. So apparently... Oh, right. That makes sense. Thanks, Bakkes. This one is using the local gravity still. But we have, yeah, gravity in this class. So we just need to remove that. So that's why this is always down. So it could be that this is not actually, yeah, it's not down at all right now. And it's not the right strength either. It's just, it's all good. All good. Yeah, alright, so nothing's working according to plan. Now we have a couple of options. First of all, alright. Okay, first of all, the strength is way too strong, obviously, because I forgot to divide the strength by the tick rate. So that's the first part we're gonna do. And then it's not gonna be as aggressive because it's gonna be 120 times weaker. But the direction should obviously still be wrong. And this is something we need to debug. But, okay. Wait, is the direction... Okay. This should just be the polar angle, right? Gravity polar is minus 90. What happens if I set it to 0? Okay, then we have negative gravity. And if I set it to 90, then we have gravity in that direction. So basically the formula I'm using expects a value between 0 and 180 and not between 90 and minus 90. So I need to shift that around. Or I just need to make the values go from 0 to 180. That is the other option. But yeah, that should be everything. Then it might already work. So I'm just gonna set it to between 0 and 180. And 0 was just negative gravity, right? Okay, this is straight down. So 180 should be the default then. Default value. Alright. Let's turn the gravity on. Dang, that sucks. It's not the intended one. Oh, right. I also already noticed the next problem. Because we need to divide by 180 here. Or otherwise multiply by 2 pi. Of course, because a full circle is 360 degrees or 2 pi. So if we divide by 180, we only need to divide by a half circle. And it might just be that all my stuff was wrong. Nope. Seems to be working just fine now, the down direction. Now it's time to actually change the angle, which is currently 180. Yeah, and we can change that to 0, which should go straight up. Okay. And this should now be on 90. It should be going exactly to one side. Alright. So now gravity is pushing me exactly to that direction. And if I turn the air recovery plugin on now, it's gonna be getting pretty freaking hard to recover. Start. Ugh. The only good part is that it's trying to throw me to the ground, which isn't actually down. Oof. But yeah, yeah, we programmed the air recovery plugin earlier, and it just bumps you around mid-air, and you're trying to recover and stay in the air, basically. It's the goal with it. And yeah, we can... Well, we should first obviously test that the azimuth angle is working properly. So for that we just first put the polar angle to 90, and then we can change the azimuth, which is by default 0. Let's change it to 90. Wait, oops, 90. Yeah, which changes it to this wall, which means oops, so 270 should change it to this wall, and it does. And let's just check. Well, the ball scores itself. Now it's 45 degree, which is even more confusing because you don't really have like specific thing to focus on. But in theory, this should work fine, and you could obviously like extend this further and like say randomly change the direction of the gravity. But yeah, it's a gravity in any direction. And now we want to create a set file, so you can actually change it with the GUI sliders. This is so weird. Okay. Let's create a set file for this. I said earlier I was gonna go over the different options here, so I guess I'm gonna just open BakkesMod, the core, and show you the options for set files. Okay, let me try and find it. I don't want to show everything. I'm gonna pull it on the main screen once I have it. Okay, I actually don't have it open anymore. Where was it again? plug-in tab component. That should be it. That is it. All right. Leaked official BakkesMod right here. All right. Here we can see the different IDs. So I should probably write this down and put this somewhere. And if I do that, I will put the link to that in the description. But yeah, we have... Okay, let's open first the settings file. Let's just copy any one of them, really. And then we can change that. Gravity plugin set, and we open this Sublime. All right, we have an ID 7, which is basically a meta component. It's just same line component, because usually if you make any component and then you do the next component, it's gonna be on a new line. So to show this in the game, this is a slider, and this is the label for the slider, but the next component, so the next slider, is gonna be on the next line. And in this case, at the bottom right here, you can see there's a start and a stop button, and they have a 7 in between each other, the start and the stop, so they are on the same line because of that. Then we have 0, the ID 0, which stands for button. Then the first part is the label on the button, and the second part is the command that it calls. Then we have a separator component. Best I'm showing all of this off, I guess. So I'm gonna save this and CL. Why is it broken again? Okay. First of all, let's turn this gravity off. This is confusing. Okay. I was gonna say, yeah, CL settings, refresh plugins. Okay. Now we have the gravity plugin should be here. Wait, it's not. Oh, it's because I didn't name it differently. That is obviously not intended. Just name it at the top. So now we have the gravity plugin here, and you can see the separator component, which is just this thin line between these. Probably not the best location to put it to show it off. And then we can see, yeah, the line that goes in between here. That's a separator component. And then we have a label component, which I do believe is just text with nothing. I'm gonna put it in the same location. So you put pipes in between everything. Yeah, it's just a label without anything. We have grayed out component, which can show you a current value, I guess. 10. Then so we have gravity on. Let's try this. No, that broke it. And that's exactly what I wrote, Bakkes. 10 pipe gravity on. Then cVars. What? Oops. All right. Put an 11 under your 7. What? This? Okay, let's try this. Ah, okay. Ah, that's interesting. So that gravity on doesn't do anything? Because all of this is grayed out? So you can just gray out a couple of things by putting 10 and then 11? Or because it's actually checking a cVar here. Oh, it's graying them out if the cVars. Oh, I get it. Okay. So gravity on basically means if gravity's on, let me turn it on, then this is not grayed out, but if gravity is off, then it is grayed out. So that defines which cVar it's related to, and this defines the end. So that's pretty cool. What else do we have important? So we have checkbox component as ID1. Then we have slider range component float as 2, slider range component int as 3. So we've already seen all of these. This is a float slider component. This is a range slider component. This is a int slider component, I mean. Slider components have these two ends. The slider range components. And these ones don't have a range, so they don't have an end and a start. They only have one value. So we're going to use those for our angles now and our strength. Then we have text input component, which I can show you in the auto replay upload, I believe. This should be one you can just write in there. That's text input component. Then we have a combo component, which is just a drop down. Those aren't that easy to define though. So I can show an example of the hitbox plugin, which uses that. So what you need to take a look at here is this component. Of course, there's again just the name, then the actual cVar that you're changing, and then we have the text that is in these components. So let me show you. We have hitbox, and there are these options: currently equipped car, Octane, Dominus, Batmobile Plank, Breakout Hybrid, and these are all here. This is currently equipped car. Then we have Octane, Dominus, Batmobile, and so on. Those are all separated by an and the at that is after the part defines which value is actually getting set to the cVar, because the cVar doesn't actually receive a string. It receives a number, the co-socar set hitbox type. So this will set the hitbox type to 0, this one will set it to 23, and so on. So you can actually set a different value than the text that is in this drop-down menu. And I believe those are all the options. So we're gonna create the file for our purposes here. So what we need is float sliders, a bunch of them, which were number 4, I believe. All right, and we have custom gravity strength, custom gravity. Well, the plugin is called custom gravity, so I'm not gonna add custom every time. Let's just go with gravity strength. gravity polar angle. And yeah, of course we need to provide the correct values here. Gravity strength, which is going to be between 0 and how much is useful? Let's say 3000. Well, it's actually a bit too much. That's not really useful anymore. Let's go with 2000. That's more than 3 times normal gravity. So let's actually go with 1800. It's a bit below 3 times normal gravity. And remember, you can still set it through the console to any value. So this is just basically for useful values. Because the larger you make the range, the harder it's gonna be to actually set it to the value that you want. So you don't want to give too large of a range. And alright, we can use this grayed out component, of course. To make it clear that this isn't only available if it's actually on. Gravity, smooth angle. Zero to 360. And then all we need is a checkbox to turn gravity on. And I'm wondering right now if I should put this at the top or the bottom, because I think it flows better at the bottom. Like the look is just makes no sense though. I'm gonna put it at the top. So checkbox component was 1. Then provide a label, of course, and yeah. Use custom gravity. And then gravity on. Let's refresh again. Nice. So now we can use this. Turn it on. Reduce gravity strength. 0, actually all the way. Then we just have regular 0 gravity. Ah, right, we need reset buttons too, right? We want reset buttons here. Just like there are in the normal game. But yeah, it's this. Alright, so we need to add reset buttons. For reset buttons, we want them to be on the same line. So we need same line component. Then we need 0 for a button. Then reset for the text. And because we can only use the same label once, we need to add these hashes, which would change the name, but you won't be able to see a difference. And then we have the command, I believe, that we want to call. Let's see if this worked for this example. It did. Alright, so this button just calls gravity strength 650. And we can use this principle on all of these to reset to default. So in terms of polar, our default was 180, I believe. And for the azimuth, it was 0. Although that reset button is actually not really needed, because, well, default gravity doesn't matter which azimuth angle you set. But yeah, anyway. So yeah, that's about everything for this plugin. I wasn't reading chat. So the only part that might be cool that isn't in here is if you would actually visualize the direction. So you could kind of like get a view of what these angles actually mean. But I guess you can see a live preview anyway. So it's not that important. But that would be a good way to show off how you can draw on screen. But yeah, it's too late anyway. So for now, this is gonna be the end. I can just show this off in Workshop, where it hopefully works. Or like obstacle course. Let's do casual in case I can't get past the level with custom gravity. So yeah, let's do this. Okay, well that's exactly the wrong direction. So let's turn it by 180. Now it will push me towards the camera. And yeah, it's as if I'm basically driving upwards in this level, but well, it's not perfect because I just set it by hand, but oops. It's basically like flying straight up. The problem with this though is if the level was oriented a different direction, then the custom gravity would work differently. Basically, if the level was oriented in a different way, but I was using the same gravity, then it would obviously push me to the side instead of push me towards the camera like it does right now. And because not all levels are oriented in the same manner, it will push me to the side in one of the levels, I expect. So let's just, I wanna actually find a level that is oriented differently. Okay, this one's still oriented the same. This one's also oriented the same. This one's also oriented the same. So maybe this map is actually all oriented the same, but yeah. But yeah, this is basically it. Custom gravity implemented. I'm gonna see that I can add this plugin to the third-party plugins available. Same for air recovery, but I guess I'll have to make some changes to that first. At least the name and stuff like of the plugin. But that will definitely not be this evening, because in 15 minutes it's midnight here, so I'm gonna end it for now. If you were interested in creation, I hope this helped. It's not a perfect tutorial, I know, but yeah. And there's basically, because there is no real documentation, there isn't like a perfect way to do it. If you get stuck, if you like don't know how do I get the ball or something, well, we talked about how to get the ball and stuff, but if you get stuck on at other points, then yeah, just feel free to ask in the BakkesMod Discord. There's a programming channel for exactly that, and there are actually quite a few developers nowadays that have already worked quite a bit with the plugin API, so they might be able to help you out, or Bakkes might be able to help you out. Maybe what you're trying to do isn't even possible and Bakkes needs to add the functions, but yeah. That's everything, and yeah, hope you enjoyed the stream, and I'll go turn it off because my throat is also Not in the best condition. Have a good night.